Hey everybody, Aaron here. Welcome to another surprise attack. Trust me, by the way, this is a surprise for me too, so it's kind of funny. Today I'm going to be looking at Noblesse Awakening, which not much I could say about this actually. It was surprised that I even reviewed something like this because more so I watched this out of just the blue. Anyways, contrary to popular belief, there is something that exists beyond the world of manga. There's actually a thing called manhwa, which is a Korean form of graphic novel, essentially, where it's more so longer strips of images and stuff like that. It's the same kind of concept as a manga, but more so read, straight down. It's done a little slightly different here and there. But there are a lot of manhwa out there, and actually, there's a whole bunch. If you've never seen them, definitely check them out. Like stuff like The Breaker, uh, Girls of the Wild, which is a kind of like martial arts girl type story, which is actually really kind of cool. But and there's plenty more besides that too. But Noblesse Awakening apparently is one of those manhwas, which is pretty popular on the website called Webtoons, I believe. And what's funny about it was I never heard about this up until yesterday when I was on Crunchyroll, kind of just berating around, looking around, seeing what I was gonna watch. I saw this up there, and it was only one episode. And I was like, okay, let me do some research first to see why there's only one episode. And lo and behold, there's actually only two Noblesse animations. There's one for a kind of prequel story, and then there's one for another prequel story that links directly with the manhwa, which is Noblesse Awakening. That's the one I'm reviewing today. I will probably get around to reviewing the other one eventually. I just don't know if I want to do it right away because I have no really interest in that storyline. And I'll tell you guys why. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, this is pretty cool, but at the same time, you'll understand when I talk my review for it. So, set in the year of essentially the 21st century, we have what it looks like a kind of weird setup. We looks like that the world was at one time populated with people that were very superior beings. Like, think of people that have a lot of strength and a lot of powers. And apparently they kind of phased off the face of the earth, and then regular humans kind of rose back up. But apparently one of them was asleep for a long time, and that is who is on the image right there. Is he's known as Noblesse, which is like noble, and I think noble lineage or something like that. If I'm got the correction right, I mean I know if I'm wrong, you guys will correct me in the comments, but I appreciate if you do. Trust me. But he essentially is what you could consider a vampire. That is probably the closest thing I could think of him being linked to, and he is not the only one. There are apparently several other dozen units of people that are like him but weaker. And for the most part, I gotta be very careful how I kind of pitch this to you guys because it is per se only 30 minutes long. So reviewing it is kind of tough. I mean, there's a lot of spoilers, possible if I review too much of it. He wakes up essentially though, and is now in the 21st century. He learns that, of course, the Earth has changed greatly from his time period, which seems to be stemming more toward the medieval time periods and stuff like that. He meets his servant, who is apparently Frankenstein. We don't know if this is the actual Frankenstein. You have to read more of the manhwa to figure that out. But he meets up with them and learns that, he's Frankenstein is actually running a school, and he's also just using it as kind of a disguise. So also Noblesse decides, you know what, I'm gonna do the same thing, and he kind of just tries to integrate with society. But meanwhile, there are people that know he exists, and they want to suck on his power to gain the strength that he has from him, his body apparently. So essentially, from there, that's why I'm gonna stop talking about this because everything else goes into kind of spoiler territory, and I don't want to do that to you guys because it is an interesting concept. Vampires, like I said before in one of my anime talks, is not a kind of unheard of thing in anime. It's something that's done in a way that can be hit or miss a lot of times, and I think Noblesse Awakening is a bit of both. Actually, I think it's the middle ground of hit and miss. On the one hand, the animation and the styling of this is awesome. I really love the animation. I think it has some nice mature themes to it. I'm not really so much for the pretty boy faces of some of the characters, but it's understandable because a lot of times in vampire lore, at least more modern day vampire lore, the vampires are supposed to be of like noble lineage and look like nobles, not look like stuff from Nosferatu days. If you guys are even old enough to know what that is, if you're not old enough, go look up on Google Nosferatu. It's an old movie that was black and white, silent. I'm not that old, but I've seen the movie before because I've watched a lot of classic movies. But besides that, though, what really doesn't hit well with me in this animation is that, besides not really setting up much of a story per se, I think it's really meant to be, watched with the manhwa. You really need to kind of read that to get enjoyment out of this. And while I'm not saying that's a bad thing per se, I think that's also kind of a hit or miss opportunity because if you don't want to continue with the manhwa, you're not going to really get much from this. I mean, this ends on a cliffhanger that directly goes into essentially what I presume a chapter of the manhwa, but it ends on such a cliffhanger that you're like, well, okay, it's over. 30 minutes hit, and you're like, that's it. What did I just watch? And don't get me wrong, like I said, the animation and the dubbing is perfect for this. I actually really like this stuff for it. But everything else is like hit or miss. The plot is really not fully fleshed out. The story concepts, the characters aren't fully fleshed out. You're given very vague and kind of small little tidbits of information that I guess would be more linked with the prequel and the manhwa. But the prequel wasn't available on Crunchyroll, so I'll have to seek that out elsewhere. I'm trying to find out where I'm going to seek that out from. But overall, though, this is not a bad animation. It's just not that great. It doesn't do anything phenomenal, and that's why my review's going to be pretty short for this. If I had to review it between the A through F, I'd have to give it a solid, like, C. Again, the animation is nice. The story is interesting at points. I really think the opening sets up a nice tone for it, but everything else is kind of your generic vampire concept. Vampires exist. They're strong. Even the fights that exist in the animation weren't that spectacular. There was one really cool scene between Frankenstein and this other vampire girl, and I was blown away. I thought the whole thing was going to be like that because it looked amazing. But everything else after that was like, I've seen it before in vampire stories. But overall, though, it's not. It is what it is. It's not, if you watch the manhwa or excuse me, read the manhwa for it, your enjoyment will probably go way further, and you'll enjoy this. But if you're one of the people that don't like doing that and you just wanted to focus on anime, I kind of warned you guys that there might not be a reason to watch this if you really don't have any intention of reading the manhwa. Personally, I have no intention of reading the manhwa because I didn't really find anything here that was enthralling. But if it was an animation or adapted into an animation, I'd be watching it because it really has some room to show some great stuff. I think it has some capabilities to do that. Anyways, guys, though, I hope you enjoyed this kind of short review. I mean, it's actually almost 8 minutes. I was surprised by that. It's hitting 7 minutes right now. Anyways, guys, as always, please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. And as always, until our paths cross again in the next review, have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.